was the first time that you can remember, or at least the most important time you can remember, when you faced the question of why God has allowed so many religions in the world? Why didn't he just make it clear to everybody what the truth was? Do you remember?
I don't remember thinking about it in such sophisticated terms. But I do remember the first time I really thought about it, which was when I was in high school, and we had some sort of report, where you were supposed to go interview someone. And my friend and I thought it would be a really great idea to interview the Hare Krishnas. And I remember, I grew up in Orange County, and there was a Hare Krishna temple in Laguna Beach. And I remember my friend and I talking about this, and how my friend Katie's mother insisted that she go with us to the Hare Krishnas because she said they are a cult. So this is what I was thinking. Katie's mother's coming because they are a cult, and I knew that at the time my idea of who the Hare Krishnas was some weird group, and you would have to have an adult with you or else you might never come back or something like that. So I was going on the morning of this interview. My friend's mother was going to take us. I remember my father dropped me off at school, and he said, he asked me about what I was doing, and I said, "Oh, we're going to see the Hare Krishnas," and I repeated, "because they are a cult." And my father said, "Well, a cult is a religion that you don't like, basically." And I remember thinking, "Oh, okay." So my father doesn't necessarily think the Hare Krishnas are a bad group. He thinks that a cult is a pejorative term. It's a religion you don't like. That's interesting. So then I went and I met with a Hare Krishna monk. I can't remember what his name was, but he was a really nice guy. He had been some sort of punk, some sort of juvenile delinquent when he was in high school or something like that. And he had, done many things that had made his parents unhappy. So they had actually become really happy when he had become a Hare Krishna monk, and, he had chosen a more gentle kind of innocuous path. And I remember coming back from this interview really impressed, and I thought that he had said some wonderful things that sounded like really reasonable, kind things, to say about the world and about how we should be. And that night, I think, or maybe it was the next morning, I was talking to my father about this, and I said, "These had a lot of things that I really agreed with." And my father said again, something that I just hadn't expected him to say. He said, "Well, remember that there's only one truth, and Satan can sometimes make things that aren't true look like they are true." And that was very interesting to me, because he had, at the beginning of my Hare Krishna encounter, he had corrected me in one way. Don't necessarily discount the Hare Krishnas. They could be fine. It's just all about how you view them. And then at the other end of this encounter, he said, "Well, don't get, too impressed by the Hare Krishnas, because remember, there's, only one truth, and sometimes things that, come from Satan can look true." So I thought that was very interesting. I didn't, when you're in high school, you don't really understand those things. But I think what that did is that, I don't know, it suggested to me the complexity of the religious world, and the reason why it was complex was because we were Mormons and we believed that we had the truth, which is also why we were kind of sensitive actually to people being called a cult, because we were also being called cults. In college I had a really wonderful roommate named Joelle, and she was a conservative Jew. And we learned a lot about Judaism from her. We thought the Jewish customs were so cool, the Jewish festivals. We wished that we Mormons could also build a sukkah on the Harvest Festival and make sure that the three sides, were strong, but the one side was open, and one of the sides of the sukkah could not be an elephant. We had learned all these rules from Joelle and her Jewish friends. And I remember Joelle saying something in one of our conversations about religion, how she thought religion was this amorphous thing. She thought it was like this. She would show it me with her hands. It's like this, it's like this. And the Jews think it's like this, and the Mormons think it's like this. But somewhere in there, that's what it is. But we all kind of think of it in different ways. And I just remember thinking that Joel was such a wonderful person, and how could it be that, I knew that I wasn't, a better person than Joel, just because I was Mormon. I wasn't better than her anyway, but my faith didn't didn't automatically make me a better person. I thought that there was a lot in her tradition that was really wonderful. So I don't know. And then I think many Mormons have this experience where they go on missions. They go out to convert people, and to tell them that their own beliefs are the best or the most compelling. And in the process, that they learn that other people's beliefs are also really wonderful and very compelling. So I don't know. I think in my life, I've had just many experiences. I've met many people who are from who espouse different religious beliefs, and I've always found, when I've met these people, that they're just wonderful people. I just don't see how. I don't understand why. I don't understand what the purpose is, for having everyone be different. But I feel like their difference is so enriching to me as a Mormon. It's not that the existence of Jews in the world, good Jews, only helps the Jewish community. It's that I feel like I've learned so much from these other traditions, and they have so much to add to my perspective and to my practice of Mormonism. I think that's really important. I've learned things from Jewish friends or from Buddhist friends or from Muslim friends that I wouldn't learn, within my Mormon community. So what is it about another religion that I really admire and wish that we had in Mormonism?
Yeah.
I really believe that Buddhism is founded on very true principles. And actually, I feel like Buddhist cosmology and Mormon cosmology are very similar, though the thing that I admire is not Buddhist cosmology. But what I admire most about Buddhism is just this basic premise, which is the Buddha taught that desire is a source of suffering, or in other words, the suffering that we feel in this world stems from attachment, from being attached to things or to people. That's the source of our suffering. And I think that's basically true. I remember when my little boy was born, Isaiah. They put him in my arms, and he was all little and pink, and he looked like a chicken, and all of that stuff. But I remember holding him in my arms, and at the same time, I felt these two, intense emotions. And the first was this, profound joy and love. Oh my gosh, this little baby. And the second feeling was this profound terror. Terror. Oh my gosh, this little baby, I love him so much. And what would happen, if something happened to him? Just, in equal measures.
Yeah.
I think it's a true principle. Suffering it comes from attachment, and which is not to say, the Buddhist answer to that, not the answer, but the Buddhist logic that would follow from that question would be that's why, it's good not to be attached, to your families even, to not just to things but to people, because that's a source of suffering, and that's where I part ways with Buddhism a little. I agree that it is a source of suffering. Our love for our children, the attachment that we feel for them, is a cause of suffering. And but I feel, from my Mormon perspective, that pain or that suffering that we feel is something that helps us to learn and to grow. But I do believe that's a true principle. Sometimes when my kids, when they fight over toys or something, or they cry because they can't have an ice cream cone or whatever, I always say, now remember, what did the Buddha teach us? And they say, attachment is a source of suffering. So it's true. I think it's true. So you're asking why Mormons should be interested in building relationships or trust with people who are our religious opponents. Well, my dissertation is on another exclusivist group, and like Mormons, they are the only true church. And right now, they're a little younger than us, but their community is also very active very tightly knit. The name of the church is the True Jesus Church, which is a lot shorter than the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But given this marketing, even despite this marketing advantage, they're still quite small. They have about 1.5 million members, and they're mostly ethnic Chinese. Even when they exist in America or Canada, it's mostly groups of ethnic Chinese. And I think that, I see the church being a little more diverse than they are right now. And I think that's because we've made more, we're just a little farther along in this process of building bridges with other churches and learning the value of interreligious dialogue and being part of society. But I always remember when people ask this question of why it's important for Mormons to kind of go outside of their Mormon community and be involved with people, I always remember what my Uncle Charles said, which is that Mormons are like manure. And if you pile them all together in one place, they just stink. But if you spread them around all over the place, then they can do a lot of good. My uncle's a farmer. He's a farm boy from Gunnison. So, and I think that's true. And another kind of maybe a more dignified metaphor, which Jesus used, is salt. Salt is terrible if you just have a big pile of salt. It has to be spread around before it makes things taste sweet, before they're good, before it's something that we like to have, that's useful, that improves the food. So I think that's the same way. If Jesus said you're the salt of the earth, and salt is supposed to be spread out, it's not supposed to be all squished together in one place. And I think that's how we're supposed to work. You know how in every family there are, the siblings have different personalities. And I have, one of my siblings is wonderful, righteous, law-abiding, pious, faithful, prayerful, et cetera, et cetera. This is a really wonderful person, and he's really working hard to live the gospel, and to be like Jesus. For some reason, he and I have really strong disagreements about, various things. I don't know, women in the church, or kind of questions of orthodoxy, I guess. What should Mormons do? What should Orthodox Mormons do? Just things like that. But when it's somebody who you know very well, I think often it's really easy to get into conflicts with them. And I don't really think of myself as a very confrontational person, but we had some really strong disagreements. And I have to remember at those times that I have to remember that my job as his sister isn't to be right. It's to take care of him. And he realizes that his job is not to be right, it's to take care of me. And I don't know, maybe that sounds like a very foolish example about how sad it is that you fight with your siblings, because we all grew up fighting with our siblings. But it's really painful for me, to have these strong conflicts where I feel like I am being judged, like my faithfulness is being judged, like I'm being deemed unfaithful, in some way, or disloyal, or whatever it is.
By someone you really care about.
By someone you really care about, right. So that's actually quite painful. And so at times like that, I remember how important it is to practice these kinds of things, and to remember that dialogue is a discipline. It's not who we naturally are necessarily. It's something that we have to practice. And so I think I've gotten better. I actually, after a couple of these times, I actually proposed to Ben, maybe we should let's have some more dialogues on these like controversial issues so I can get better at this. because it's really something that we have to practice, I feel. And if we're not good at it, if it's something that pushes our buttons, like I find that usually we're really good about being civil and diplomatic about certain kinds of things, but there's always something that's really hard to talk about in a civil way. If someone makes a certain accusation, then you always, want to, you feel something in you that just blows up unexpectedly. There's just certain things, it's really easy for me to be diplomatic about, theology, soteriology, who may be saved, that's very easy for me. But there's just certain issues, depending on who's talking to you or what you're talking about, that are just where you find that you have a very strong reaction. And I think it's our responsibility to figure out when those issues come up, to recognize that this is somewhere where I feel like I'm trying to be such a kind, diplomatic, patient person, blah, 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 where I find that I have a long way to go. And so I just think we have to work on those. It's our moral responsibility.